Yeah. Yeah.
Hear that music? Hear that music? Hear that music?
You know, still fresh.
Hear that music?
Go on. Fresh.
Hear that music? Hear that music? Hear that music?
You know, still fresh.
Hear that music?
Go on. Fresh.
Hear that music? Hear that music? Hear that music?
You know, still fresh.
Hear that music?
Go on. Fresh.
Hear that music? Hear that music?
Get it, girl.
Hear that music?
Dance with me.
You know, still fresh.
Get it,
Hear that music?
Go on. Fresh.
get it, girl.
Hear that music?
Get it,
Hear that music?
Wanna
get high. Kids don't wanna come down. Kids wanna get down. Kids don't wanna come down. Kids wanna get down.
Trust, 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 trust.
Kids wanna get high, get high. Kids wanna get high, get high. Kids don't wanna come down. Kids wanna get down. Kids don't wanna come down. Kids wanna get down. Kids wanna get high, get high. Kids wanna get high, get high. Kids don't wanna come down.
We are Samurai, the keyboard cowboy.
Get off the stage. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. You should be ashamed of yourself. Who do I work for? I work for Congress. How many ill-adjusted toddlers are out there? They're leaning to one side. They're not weighted properly. Pardon me.
Hey, you never say no in improv.
For those who didn't hear JC, he said, I'll give you an automatic 10 if you both hold the microphone at the same time for the whole time.
We're in it for the points.
Get off the stage. You shouldn't be here.
I got my move.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Second Order Chaos. My name is Rando. I got through an entire intro without fucking anything up. That's got to be a record. You guys can talk now. You're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah. No, I'm positive.
100% sure, because I can't hear you.
You can't hear? What do you mean you can't hear me?
I like to point out that you're already getting flack for being 11 minutes late. I'm just saying.
What? Red? Or I'm sorry. There's two Reds now. There's Lady Demona, who's red, and Alkaline Red. Are you new here? I'm never on time. I'm never early, and I'm never on time for only this. I'm on time for everything else in my life except this. Yeah. Thank you, DNS Princess. I'm literally always late. How dare you?
Yeah, it could be worse. I mean, it could be early, and then nobody will show up.
Could be early, and then you have to sit through more of this shit from me.
Apparently, you have your own metric of how late you're going to be, and you're being held to that metric.
Well, the question is, if he starts every time at like 11 minutes past 10, he's actually not late. He's keeping time.
I am like a goddamn grandfather clock. Well, welcome everybody. Once again, my name is Rando, and I would like to introduce. Well, first of all, before I introduce, I usually have music playing underneath, but this is not a music underneath kind of episode.
Well, no Def Leppard, then it's not worth it. It better be Def Leppard, otherwise, just
No, it's that rubbish. It's that rubbish electronic music.
No copyright. No copyright.
One
Yeah,
second.
exactly.
All music nowadays electronic somehow.
No, I haven't gotten dinged for a while, which means the game music live stream 24/7 music I play is actually literally they don't ding you for it. Yeah, they don't ding you for it at all. So before I get started, for everybody in the chat, everybody who will come in later in the chat, I will periodically remind people in the chat that this is a very literally heavy episode. It's actually called The Heavy, and we'll get to that in a minute. Yes, trigger warning, which I take very, very seriously. This is a lot of heavy emotional shit we're about to talk about. We are about to talk about partner-on-partner violence. We are about to talk about mental abuse. I'm sure like physical abuse will come up as well. PTSD, all of this stuff. And once upon a time, not that I didn't take stuff like that seriously. Like I knew what depression was. I have it. I see a therapist, and I take a med for it, and I feel much better. But the anxiety, and I guess a form of PTSD for me, I didn't experience till during quarantine, when things would happen. Like I would hear a random song on the radio, and like not apropos of nothing, just fucking start crying and like be useless for a couple of days, which was shocking to me. I'm relaying my own experience with this now, as now I'm more open-minded, hence why we're doing these warnings. This is going to be some heavy shit, but it's going to be some important stuff. All of it's going to be very, very important because we're caught up in a lot of different things right now with quarantine. We are caught up with the world being on fucking fire, economy, jobs, people dying, people getting very, very sick. But there's a million and one stories out there of different things that some people might not think about. Like if you're quarantined with an abuser, if you are quarantined in an unhealthy relationship and you have nowhere else to go, normally you might be scared to go somewhere. Now you really can't go anywhere. So how is that situation going to be taken advantage of? So anyway, that's my little intro trigger warning. It's going to be some really heavy stuff. And now I'm going to introduce my guests. Honestly, I don't know if I've told them this yet, but a critical, really pivotal role they've played in my own version of quarantine. Because during this, I had built my new Stream Beast PC, which is like super heavy i9 2080 Ti 32 gigs. Oh, this thing is a fucking beast. Just mostly for streaming, but also because I had a newer laptop that couldn't even play Borderlands 3, and I was pissed off about it. And then I happened across, I don't even know how I got to talking to Lady Demona, and then she invited me to game with her friends, including Mr. Silent Shot, who I've met, and those gaming sessions and just being able to have some fun with them, and it was a whole new level of contentment that I have through this quarantine. So they don't know how much that has meant to me. It's not just it actually has helped quite a bit. So
we give shit, but we're not toxic.
Oh
right?
my no. It's funny shit. Like your friends running me the fuck over. And like,
dude, and we warned you. Listen, we officially warned you, but you didn't listen. We're like, get off the ground.
I'm like, how bad could it be? I really wish that's one of those times I wish I would have been recording. But no, it's been great. And then more than on one occasion, like I during the day, I just, thanks to Discord, it's very easy to talk to people. So I will have conversations with Red. And we got to talking about, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves a little bit. And then we're going to get to the topic. So Red, start with you.
So I'm Red, also referred to as Lady Demona, but if you know me, people just call me Red. Yeah, I hate self-introductions and I hate talking about myself. And this is nightmare fuel for me pretty much, but it's important shit that I think needs to be out there specifically in these times as well as within our industry as well. And I play games and talk shit and have good times. Silent, go for it.
You hate introductions, so I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes introducing you. So, Lady Demona, known as Red to everybody, is one of the most amazing people out there. We'll spend at least 20 minutes just making up. Brenda's going to just riff off in there, you know. No, so I am a Silent Shot, known in the industry for being either really blunt or really arrogant. I'm not sure which. You know, some people take blunt as arrogant.
Why not both?
But I want both. I want a T-shirt. Also, actually, in the business circles, I'm being nicknamed the Def Leppard CISO because quite often I have been at a conference, they've lost a speaker, and they've asked me to come up. And since I'm there on my personal time, I've been there in a Def Leppard hoodie or a Def Leppard T-shirt and been up on stage with likes of all kinds of people dressed in a suit, and I'm up there going, I don't care. Really?
And if you happen to hear a cat in the background that is puffing, he'll make a couple appearances because that's him.
Or Gizmo will show up somewhere. Just got to make sure. So.
Well, cool.
And
no, continue. You were only at like minute 3 of your intro.
No. So Chris, you know, a lot of things that Red does is she's an avid gamer. She loves helping other companies. She works in the startup industry, giving people advice. We can spend here for hours.
No, please don't. This is fine. No. We're good.
She really is remarkable. She also has quite the influence on what I eat for lunch, apparently.
This is true as well. I have Smart Pop if anyone wants any, but probably not straight.
I haven't had French onion dip in like 3 years, and I have one midday conversation with her about what we're going to talk about today, and I'm like, well, that looks really good, and then I'm at the grocery store 5 minutes later.
I'm always about enabling.
That's right. Like I said, you know.
So
that actually slides really nicely into the conversation.
Yeah, it really, really does. So one of the topics her and I had gotten to talking about was this talk that she had given. And I mean, Demona, I'm just gonna let you kind of just go into it.
Okay, so the Heavy is a talk that I've given a very short number of times. Layered 8 was actually the most recent one, and the Heavy is the code name for it. The actual title is A Hacker's Guide to Self-Exfiltration. And the topic of it was essentially looking back at my situation where I'm an intimate partner violence survivor, and can I put together a guide or something that can help other people to exfiltrate themselves from a really horrible or dangerous situation. And then in doing this presentation, which was a form of catharsis, I realized very quickly that during this whole process, during my entire growing ups to adulthoods-ish, I realized that I did not quite have the correct vocabulary or even the terminology to adequately describe what was happening to me as I was going through it. And the reason why Silent Shot's here is that he's kind of that external person that saw into the eye of the hurricane and was pretty much, just plucked me out, so to speak, and gave me the tools to create or to identify the vocabulary to be able to adequately describe what I was going through. And then because I'm a nerd and I like topologies, I then start looking for patterns on things that are really great in our society and things that really suck in our society. And I started to kind of just put things together. So that is what the Heavy is. Yes.
Yeah. And also it was also a retrospective of her looking back at her life situations over the last 10 odd years to understand all the different points and why certain things trigger and also set things off, right? Because you never come out of both physical and mental abuse unscarred. You may think you do, right? But there's so many things in life that we all go through that leave memories, deep memories, And
repressed memories or just like not even access to stuff and not
yeah,
really realize it.
also your mind is a great way of building up a complete different story or narrative in your head until you take time to spend time looking at it. You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. No one on here. So you're losing audio, just so you know. You're losing audio on the stream, just so you know. I mean, the other red was like, "We can't hear you."
Oh,
But
maybe
can
she's.
you guys hear us?
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm good now. I'm good. And I celebrated too early to say I didn't fuck anything up. So anyway, gonna edit
yes,
that in
none of
post.
us are at all any sort of mental health professionals. Everything that we're going to talk about is either based on our own personal experiences or my interpretations of it. The human psyche is a complicated and nuanced and just multifaceted thing. And we can pretty much only talk about our personal experiences as well as the coping mechanisms and as well as the things that we've learned to help ourselves. And hopefully that can help other people.
Yeah, and everybody's journey is actually completely individual. Every trigger, everything that they experience is individual and
It's
personal.
subjective. Yeah.
And it's really hard for some people to actually relate, like Rando said at the beginning. And it's one of the things. For me, a lot of this stuff comes around body language, and that's what tells me most times when I see things happening, where I can start putting patterns together, realizing that in things. And I was calling these things out at Lady Demona way before she
Yeah.
realized some of the stuff that was happening.
Yeah, so to kind of give context, right? My nonverbal cues were completely different over a amount of time. And yes, silence completely correct. So I want to kind of go and first describe a couple of terminology, and then we can kind of go down the whole path of things that we've experienced and things that have helped. So if you happen to Google abuse or emotional abuse, it's not going to help. Like as a survivor in the thick of it, you would go and first of all, you may not realize that you're a survivor or a victim of any sort of domestic abuse. Secondly, if you happen to Google abuse, and click on Google Images, you're going to see a lot of sales campaigns, which is like the movie ties, mostly physical, not even talking about emotional abuse. And with that, as well as the representation of abuse in movies, before this whole situation, you hear the word abuse and you thinking someone's going to hit you. It's not necessarily the case. There is more damage, I would assert, in emotional and mental abuse because you don't actually see the physical ramifications directly. Asterisk, will come back to that. Than that of physical violence. So that's a bit of a terminology thing that we should probably talk about. Also, I really hate the term domestic violence. There's more of a newer term called intimate partner violence. I'm also not a big person that's like violence against women. I'm like, no, it has no gender bias. It happens to men. It happens to women as well. Intimate partner violence is more of a more broader term because depending on, until recently, domestic violence will always assume between a man and a woman. It may not actually be the case, right? So IPV is the more normalized term, but you also will see a lot of, domestic violence hotline, national domestic violence hotline. I prefer calling it intimate partner violence just because it gives the nature of the abuse that's actually happening. And violence, again, is not physical. It can also have a violent outburst, emotional ramifications as well. Those are my 3 top nitpicks on the whole topic of it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead, Silent.
No, go ahead, mate.
No, that's what I was going to say. That if there was anything that I am personally learning lately with all of the unrest now and everything really starting to come to a head, is that I never thought too much about terms that we're taught growing up and we hear in the media for years and years and years, and that like they're not necessarily the best way to describe these things, and a lot of it really kind of dulls it down, like, oh, domestic abuse, you've heard that for years, but then switch it over to what it really is, intimate partner
violence.
Yeah, like is a much more apt term for it. So I'm thinking a lot more about that of just different ways that I've been taught to do things or think about things.
And
go ahead. And also it's the power of words, right? And also the loss of power of words. Now a breach realistically means nothing to most people because it happens all the time, right? So when something's changed into something that's more actually realistically about that topic, it actually has a little bit more power, because domestic violence for so long, very much word means it happens in the house,
married couple,
right? And nothing else. And if you look at 85% of the movies and TV shows, it's the man. Thank you very much.
Yep.
But
it's not necessarily the case in actuality.
No, and we actually have good friends that were males that were abused physically by their partners, right?
Yeah, and another dovetailing into the power of words, right? You're going to hear this a lot. If you're in crisis, call the national insert number here hotline. If you actually try to figure out what crisis means, a layperson Googling on the internet what this actually means, there's not really a good definition. It goes back to everything is subjective. So you have, for me, like, I thought that I was relatively intelligent, that I would know if I'm in crisis. I didn't actually think that I was in a crisis situation, right? So it really is, to your point, very subjective to you as an individual. And how I might define that term would be something that's completely different than how you would define that term. But giving a good stab at it, asterisk, I am not a healthcare professional, a crisis moment is a moment to where either you need to get yourself out of a situation or you feel trapped in a situation to the point that you don't know what to do next, or you're just so worn down by whatever situation that you're in that you are either lost or not entertaining good thoughts. That's coming close to a crisis moment in my definition of it. Again, if you try to look on a lot of these American resources, it's not defined well. It's always, they say, if you're in a crisis, and assuming your audience knows what that means.
A crisis ranges from financial to health to what do you call it, right? But what I'd like to add here is if you're in a crisis, there is a point that you actually may know what to do, but are scared shitless to do it because of the person who's in front of you, right? And the minute you're afraid to do something because of the person in front of you, you have problems, and you have to actually think about that, And as adults, as we grow up, we think everything gets easier. In fact, it just gets more convoluted and more scary and more challenging, And we've all had points where been in crisis, right?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I have never known a true fear of a loss until I got well into my adulthood, or a fear of things changing, and you believe you have so much more invested now, you have so much more skin in the game of like, and you're convincing yourself that all of that stuff is worth whatever you're currently going through. One of the things that I was really interested by when I first started speaking about this with Red, is that this entire thing holds no small amount of cross pollination with things like social engineering. Right? We
Yeah.
talk about
Usually.
we talk about this ad nauseum in the hacker community, the security community, as like, as something as a service, and like, here are some techniques that hackers do, and blah blah blah. But and this is another thing that her and I had talked about, was I've taken all of Chris Hadnagy's courses. I was very fortunate to get them for free, and like, I went down there and it was awesome, and I took his intro and his master class, and one of the things that struck me the most was that I don't care what I do in life career-wise. I don't care if I stay in security or I go build houses. Everything here is applicable to every single facet of life. And it is both a amazing advantage to know these things and to get to know people better and to care more, but it is also such a powerful weapon of people who would use it and use these techniques to do things like intimate partner violence. So, Red, I'll let you take it.
So
from
let
there.
me jump on that, right? So, in a situation of a partner and a partner having a problem, there are two social engineers, right? There's this one who wants to get X, whatever X is, right? Physical, mental, domination, control, whatever, right? He or she is using their social engineering body language techniques to read that person. The other person is looking for the cues to know what kind of mindset that person is in, to know how to behave in whatever current situation. Now, anybody who has kids knows kids do that. Dad comes home, he looks ticked off. I just read that body language. I'm not asking for my pocket money.
Yeah, watch your
The
ass.
same. Yeah, it's the same. Husband comes home, wife comes home, mad. Husband comes home with flowers, or wife comes home with flowers, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever your thing comes home with flowers. Why? What is this? And if you're in a situation where things happening, and you'll be, why did he come home with flowers? What is going on? Right now, there are times when people, if you're not in a situation, an abusive situation, that may be natural.
In a healthy relationship, that's pretty completely natural, right? But from my experience, if the abuser came home and there was flowers, I'm immediately on the defensive, going, "What happened? Why are you being nice?" Right? And to your point, yes. So there is this whole spectrum of persuasion, right? On the good side, you have the social engineers and Chris Hadnagy and leave them feeling better having met you. But you can take that same skill set, and if you give it to a person who has abusive behaviors, who are trying to
or a
affect
manipulator
control,
or whatever.
exactly. It's the same skills, but it's the spectrum of how you use them.
And don't get me wrong, they want you to think you're better off for meeting them.
Right. So it's, again, social engineering. Yes, you're completely correct. It is, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So a lot of the techniques that you learn in social engineering, Social Engineering 101, they have been honed and perfected by abusers, right? May not have the actual formal training like you have had or we've had, but have figured it out through their years growing up, testing it out on multiple individuals to have a very tuned tool set at their disposal.
And depending on the situation, some of these people have a very clear template of the person they're looking for.
Yeah, or it could be completely subtle over a long period of time, decades.
There was something that you said, Silent, that I had also like really. I don't know why it had never occurred to me before I like took those classes, and really like I've never done it professionally, but like it's been an interest for years of mine now of how people give and receive information, and I never really applied that to what you had said about how, hey, dad comes home and oh shit, read his body language. So let me communicate to that person in a way that's gonna not get me slapped around. Just like when you're on an engagement or you're fishing or you're on a phone, how do these people receive the information that you're going to give? Because they might not be receiving it the way that you're intending to give it. So how do you change that? And that is a very, very powerful tool that helps people communicate with personalities that they might not otherwise get along with, but you want something from them. You need something from them. So you have to get really good at it, which can be a super, super dangerous skill in the wrong hands. So Red, we've gone over terminology. We've gone over kind of the bedrock of this. Where do you want to go now?
I mean, so there's a couple of really good references. If anyone out there wants to really read more into personalities and dangerous personalities, Joe Navarro has a really great book, Dangerous Personalities. He kind of breaks down the 4 major abusive personalities out there. And this, I have to give the audience of this. So again, Joe Navarro, huge name in social engineering as well. This book's audience is based off of interviews and data collected and survivors' statements, right? So he breaks down 4 general dangerous personalities, which is narcissistic personality, paranoid personality, the predator, and emotionally unstable. Gives some characteristics about them, gives survivor statements for you to read to see if it resonates with the breeder. And then gives some mechanisms on how to adapt or how to cope with individuals within your life that has some of these traits. Now, asterisks, right? There is within the DSM, which is the diagnoses book for psychology and psychological stuff, DSM-5, a entry for narcissistic personality disorder. There is a formalized criteria, right? When I'm talking about like narcissism, this is not that formalized criteria, right? This is more around the attributes and behaviors that you might see someone who has pieces of this. Also, every human being has pieces of this, right? So we all have some narcissistic tendencies. We all
Me and
have
Rando are the biggest narcissists you meet.
Yeah,
I love myself so much.
Exactly. There's nobody better than me.
But
And
there's
I
always
sound
like
awesome.
You do actually. No, I will give you that. Kind of excited sitting here listening to you.
Thank you.
No. You guys can bromance. I can go. It's all good. Need a moment.
Just trying to cut the tension.
I know. I'm sorry. It's so bad. I can get a cat. So again, really good book.
Bring up your pussy. No.
Um,
Where's
he
Puff
left
anyway?
me. He left.
Yeah, Gizmo left me too.
Oh, cats, the one time we need you. And I can go through a little bit of them, but honestly, get the book. It's a good read, it's a quick read. For me and my experience, right? So I was dealing with, upon reflection, heavy narcissistic personality with a dash of paranoid and emotionally unstable. So my experiences was very much a lot of what you would call idealization or love bombing, which is the abuser puts the victim on a pedestal, tons of doting upon, tons of love bombs.
Hence the flowers.
Hence the flowers, and you're going, why? Right. And then that kind of breaks down into a devaluation, right? So again, as the abuser's confidence and control around the victim wanes, they will start to devalue the victim, to start breaking down their self-confidence. Speaking of cat. And so this usually devalue stage usually happens until such time, the cat, until there is an abusive event. And I'm going to put an asterisk by abusive event. Abusive event could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be an outburst. It could be a point where the victim feels unsafe, or they change their behavior to give control back to the abuser. And then from that point, you're going back up to the love bombing idealization. So it's this constant hot, cold tornado, right? So
And
yes,
also,
go ahead.
also in that situation, he wanted everybody's perception of him to be the ultimate perfect husband.
Yes. So again, narcissistic personalities, using Joe Navarro's book, it's all about outward perception. It's all about everything looks great. The closest that I can kind of give it is, the scene. It's a bad example, but I'm going to give the example. The scene in American Psycho, Stop, where it's the card and they're evaluating the business card on who has the best font, who has the best pound of material, and fuck off. It's that perception and that thought of being perceived is very ingrained. And if something challenges that perception or challenges the construct around what they have built, that's where you start to have the devalue and explosive abusive event.
So and I don't know how you want to go through this. You can do it however you want. Do you want to go through maybe like a timeline
Sure.
of your stuff? This is very
10 years
personal.
ago.
Yeah, this is very
11,
What's that?
Yeah, so this is very personal. I don't care. I want to keep it as OSINT friendly as I can.
For sure.
So this is over a decade of abusive behavior. So me and my ex-partner dated for 5 years, right? I, after the first few years, moved completely different part of the country to an area where I had little to no other influence or friends or network. So when I moved, all of my friends were his friends, if that makes sense. And yes, Alkaline Red, I will get to you. We're getting there. It's going to be heavy, but I got to get there. So 2012-ish, 2013-ish, went from dating to eventually being married. At this point, between 2012-ish, 2016, there was a lot of events that slowly, upon retrospect, was degrading my own self-confidence. So was married. I started having health issues. So again, while you don't necessarily see physical manifestations of emotional abuse directly, like if someone hits me, you will bruise. You will start to see the general heightened cortisol levels and stress to your limbic system start producing stress within your own bodies. The way that it manifested in me, right, was I now have fibromyalgia, right? So again, when my stress levels go up, I feel like shit. And I was diagnosed shortly after getting married. Ironically, hindsight is 2020, right? There was a time in that 4-year period where I was fortunate enough to work out of country for a few months that gave me some insight subconsciously around, wow, it's so good to be away. I'm on another continent. This is actually, I'm not looking forward to my spouse coming to visit me on holiday. In hindsight, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. It's a lot of, this is normal. This is what happy married couples, they all go through this, a lot of this narration. At the same time, a lot of gaslighting is going on, a lot of blame shifting is going on. I'm assuming everyone knows what gaslighting is because it's now in the media, but blame shifting is also problems. Abusers will try to shift blame to the victim so they cannot look like they're at fault, right?
For those who might not know what gaslighting is, what is that?
So gaslighting is retroactively changing history or the narrative of the history to suit the abuser's needs. So, oh, I told you, honey, that I was going to go to this place late. No, I don't think you did. Oh, I totally did. And then you start rewriting history for a victim through these types of techniques. And it's another way that you'll start to doubt your own sanity and lose confidence in your own thoughts as well. Okay, so fun things, right? So 2016 or so, it was a catalyst, right? So I started having friends that were outside of his area of control, right? So I had more InfoSec friends. I had more friends that were not necessarily that core group upon moving up to where I moved. And that exasperated a lot of the abusive behaviors in both frequency and intensity. So again, that loss of control, that devaluing aspect to the actual events started to happen a lot more. You throw in a lot of alcohol abuse in there as well. So that's just going to be another gasoline on the fire type of a situation. So late 2016, there was a situation where I actually left the house temporarily because of both alcohol and the phrase, like, his life was not complete unless he had a child. And that was one of the things to where he had progressed to the point, in my opinion, that he wanted to have a kid, to essentially lock me into that relationship. And again, going into this for over a decade, like, you know my line on certain things, and that's one of them. And then shortly after that, in Q4-ish 2016, there was a month-long vacation to a completely different continent, completely opposite side of the world, for about 4 weeks, where it was me, the abuser, and one other person, where things just escalated to the point of I was completely physically isolated from my entire support network. Every single evening, there were fights with regards to what are you doing, Red? Who are you talking to? The constant barrage of verbal violence or verbal assault was just unending for 4 weeks straight, to the point where coming back to the United States, I started leaning heavily on pretty much my InfoSec support people. And it all coalesced into a moment to where I woke up because, ironically, I felt something very cold under my hand. And it turned out that my ex-partner decided to take my work phone and slide my thumb under my Touch ID to try to get access to my physical device, right?
Exactly.
And
Oh, you bitch.
breathe. I'm fine now. Fluffy kitties.
Fluffy
Breathe,
kitties,
breathe.
fluffy kitties.
Right. But it took 10 years of boiling a frog, right? It's the boiling the frog analogy of things kind of, give an inch, take a mile. And I know there's kittens. And it wasn't until a physical act for me that was like, bitch, please, right?
So, just a quick question. Up until then, and you don't have to answer this, had he ever been physically violent with you?
Not physically violent.
Okay.
Now, I have experienced physical forms of assault and having to do with no consent, right? So again, I'm going to preference, if there is no consent, it is assault.
Right.
Whatever it is.
That was just the important point I wanted to make, that lest anybody think that when you hear intimate partner violence that it's a physical violence. Could go on for years without ever laying a physically violent hand.
Yes.
And there's a great video about consent with T.
Yes. So if you Google YouTube consent T, is a fantastic video, 2 minutes long, lighthearted, right? So again, it's like, would you like a cup of tea? Consent is like asking if you would like a cup of tea. The person can say yes to tea. The person also has the right to say no to tea after you've boiled the kettle, added the milk. They can still say no, right?
Exactly.
That is still okay.
And if they wanted tea yesterday, doesn't mean they want tea today.
Every single day, right?
Dude, that video is so worth it. Anyway.
Yes.
Back to your story.
So again, in retrospect, it took a physical action for me to kind of go, this is not okay. And short of it is that I fled. Like, I had commitments to meet someone else for a movie. I already had committed to that. I used
Come on,
that.
it was a movie that everybody wanted to see. Stop.
It was Star Wars. And I used that to get out of the house. And ironically, the only person that I could think of within my network that I happened to even be close to real thinking that they could help me was the CISO of my company. Silent. And so I called. I was like on the side of the road calling completely. That was
In the
my crisis
middle of a
moment.
snowstorm.
Yeah, there was a blizzard too, which in retrospect, again, crisis moment, but I didn't really realize this until a few years later. So I called, and I couldn't actually verbalize, and the phone cut out, and so he called back, and something weird happened. It rang to my ex. So again, when you talk about control, he had already assimilated most of my digital identity. iTunes, we shared an iTunes account. He just routed the calls to his phone, right? And so when I talk about the slow boiling of frog pervasiveness, right? That loss of identity was almost absolute for me. Now, let's go ahead.
Robert, he picks up the phone and of course automatically goes into the, oh, thank you very much for all you did when we were on vacation. You know what's going on. You know, I made the biggest mistake. Da 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 da. Right. First off, I gave him the belief that I knew everything that went on. Right. And I had zero clue outside of a freaking phone rang. Right. And secondly, just let him talk about how everything is amazing and how he for once he was the problem, and you know he's going to change everything and make sure that when I talk to her and make her understand how, you know, he sees all the problems that he's done, right?
So the short version is the abusive social engineer got social engineered by a better social engineer, but the proper like light side one, not the dark side one, right? So that was the event. So I'll gloss over everything else, but I'll give you the factoids, right? I spent 3 months completely bouncing between houses and couch surfing because once I had left, I needed to put it in silence terms. I needed time to start to rationalize my brain because I was in an area of influence by the abuser for so long. I kind of needed time to process. He spent that time stalking, like full on stalking, trying to find people on Google Street View that kind of looks like me wearing the same pants and accusing me of meeting people. Again, not making it up. This is now more into the paranoid area of Joe Navarro's book.
But
And
let's just add the real thing. He even admitted he knew this was stupid behavior.
Yeah,
right?
Like do you not realize that Google Street View is cached from the summer? And what are you talking about, right?
In winter.
Yeah, it was the middle of winter at this point. So again, we can breathe, right? And so it was a rough situation. So I was bouncing, couches for about 3 months, and then I had to essentially start to extract myself and start to have the own conversation with myself around the behaviors that I was seeing. But at the time, I didn't have words to put on it, right? So that's where I started to do all that research and go, oh, I'm minimizing and blame shifting. Okay, and then the Joe Navarro book was like, yep. No, yep. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. And so after that 3 months, I decided to reestablish elsewhere. And then it wasn't until about a year plus later that I was able to actually get divorced. But during that time, and even to this day, I still have PTSD with regards to a lot of situations. I still can't go to old grocery stores or old stores that I used to go to. But when I mean that, I mean chains, right? Because I just can't handle that. And there was a lot of fearfulness of my physical safety to the point that at my previous employers, I brought it up to HR, and we can kind of talk about that one very judiciously, Silent, around, you do the correct thing of being a good employee, and you go to HR and go, I'm fearful for my physical safety because of this situation. And yeah, that wasn't handled very well
Nope.
within my organization. Okay, so that was heavy. Before I get into stuff, do you want to take like an AMA question or any sort of like, do I need to get my cats? He's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody that has any questions for Red as we're going through this, or for Silent, I will ask one in the interim of what is your favorite computer game to play?
Oh God. You're asking people with 200 and 800 libraries in Steam.
Who mock me because you don't have to even scroll to see all my games.
Pick a genre
First person
or
shooter.
a platform.
Porn.
Ah,
Sorry.
there. No.
I mean, yeah,
Correct.
Yeah, there is a thing.
That is actually a first person shooter. You are correct. Well, depending on the whatever. POV.
So
Mod.
I like puzzles. I still like the Portal series and the Stanley Parables.
Silent, what
But
about
is-
you?
Anything that doesn't have sports involved or car racing.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't like any of that shit either. I don't have to think. Like, I'm playing BioShock right now, and like,
Yeah, good
Which one?
series.
The reboot.
well, so I got the whole package. So I have the
Are you
original.
underwater or are you in the sky?
I'm in the sky.
Okay, that's all.
Oh.
That's all I need to know.
It's a lot of walking, but I'm like, can I shoot people yet? Can I? Because I played the original back on Xbox, but like I'm not used to it.
It's Infinity, isn't it? BioShock Infinity.
Yes,
It's one in
that's
the
Yes.
sky.
Infinity.
Yeah. So
Okay.
okay. Good palate
So-
cleanser.
I mean, it's up to the people. It's going to get rough, but again, we have to get good palate cleansers in here.
Yeah. No, go for it.
Again, I am fine. I am in a good situation. I am sharing in that you might have to help other people because I know Puffin, within information security, we are uniquely positioned to both understand social engineering and understand privacy, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is the red you see today is not the red that was around in 2016, right? There's a level of confidence that's back. You know, her head is in a better place. Her hair is lighter. I mean, it's just you know, people once they're out of a bad situation don't know what a good situation is until they actually think, and then they quite often don't think they deserve it.
So let's give some tools on how to help. If you are in
We
a
can't.
situation,
The Windows Phone isn't there anymore.
it's true. It's actually Windows Phone was for the win for me because no one ever used it. So some interesting tools
miss
or
my Windows Phone.
factoids, yeah, that we could at least give to those out there. So there's some things that I wish I had known that going through it that would help me, right? So there are 32 states in the United States that have something called the Address Confidentiality Program. So what that is, in that moment of crisis, and say you have escaped an abuser, this is a program put on by the state attorney general's office. And what it is that you call them, make an appointment, and you can have your physical address obfuscated for all your mail. And this is also an address that you can put on your license, right?
Yeah.
Which is not something that you can do normally. So all of your mail will go to the state AG's office, and then the state AG will forward you the mail to wherever you're going to be. And then that is on your license, which is huge.
Almost like the witness protection program. Almost the same.
Almost, but not really, right? There's also, I need to pull out the number of states, but a number of states also have, it is domestic leave policies. So I think it's in the 20s, the sheer number of states that have it. So there are state laws that says if you have to, meet a lawyer, find new housing because you're in an IPV situation, your employer has to give you the time off to do it. Now, depending on the state, it's either paid or unpaid, right? But you don't have to blow all your vacation time to do this, right? I blew all my vacation time, and then I'm in one of the states, and I went to my employer and was like, give me my time off back, bitches.
And there's several reasons for this, right? The reason one is that you don't want the abuser's better half, who is influence and control, say, hey, let's go on vacation for 2 weeks, and say, no, I've only got 10 days,
One day
right?
or 2 days,
Yeah.
right?
Then where did that vacation go, which drives it into a different situation, right?
Yes, so that's domestic leave. And then there are tons of other things that you can do. Like, so again, if you're an info second year consultant, you always have a consultant's bag. I've grown up consulting. I always have a consultant's bag or a go bag. And I was doing this before I even
I have a
realized
credit card.
you had a credit card. However, my credit card was shared. I threw my entire phone out the door, right? So again, the Windows Phone reference, right? I got a corporate phone. I got a company phone. I transferred my number to Google Voice. That I was using that for OSINT purposes, as far as like a possible attack vector if he started
And
to
documentation.
and documentation, because it goes into the website. You can print it out. You can provide it for your lawyers as well. Most all of this is going to be like factual things that you can help with as well. I went completely mobile at my office. So again, because in my situation, it's an open campus that's embedded into a major metropolitan area, you have to go between buildings. And that is why I approached the HR of my former employee and said, look, I'm fearful for this. Now, their response to this was, here's the employee assistant program for mental health resources. Here's the thing. If you have disclosed to your company that you're fearful for your physical safety, and say the worst has happened, right? The abuser comes on campus and does something, your company is now liable. So that was a horrible situation, a horrible handling of a situation. The short answer is the entire security team escorted me for years between meeting buildings for every single meeting that I had to have on campus, because unfortunately, HR and physical security did zilch. And it's fun times, right? And so, what other things? Ironically, to kind of dovetail into that, it was only until after I exited the company that one, HR acknowledged the fact that they kind of fucked up and they're doing a global company-wide program so that other people don't fall through the crack. Which is how this whole thing started, because I was lamenting about that, and then I was like, blah, and then you were like, let's go on second word chaos. Go ahead.
I think you should bring up the stuff about address changing, bank accounts, and all that stuff, because I think a lot of people wouldn't know the impact that has once you're out and away.
Yeah. So tactically, right? If you change your address with your bank accounts, so say you're on a joint account, close the account. It is harder. You need the abuser's consent to remove them from an account than closing and starting up a new account. Also, if you're changing an address on the account, you need to ask the bank, are you going to send a letter to my previous address saying that the account address has been changed to a new address?
Yeah.
Right? Every single iTunes, Amazon stuff, cycle your new credit card numbers, everything. So there's another book, which is Violet Blue's Smart Girl's Guide to Privacy. That's the second book I would recommend as well. Anything that you have joint or shared, it is harder to remove them than to close and open another account. Also, if you're on shared data plans or shared cell phone, just chuck the phone. Chuck the phone if you're fortunate enough to buy a new phone, because stalkerware is a thing. Eva from EFF has talked ad nauseum about this. And the layman may not even know if their actual device has been compromised or not, right?
Yeah, and quite often they'll buy a new device and then just put a backup on top of it, which will just reinstall the game.
Yeah. Yes. So that's fun. Amazon Dash buttons, get rid of, right? Every single social media site, turn it off. Waze will now put where it's connected to Facebook. Everything is so you're trying to go off map, not off grid. So I deleted every single social media platform and well, I eventually deleted it. I used it as OSINT reconnaissance because now it was more around getting evidence of the abusive behavior because it's so subtle and persuasive than just completely blowing everything away. Yes, I did ultimately blow everything away once I am free of that situation. Should I tell the divorce lawyer story, Silent?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. So one of the ways that this can be used, right, and this actually happened, is that so one of the funny things, if you see my icon on Twitter, it's a person doing circus arts. And so I do circus arts, right? I do static trapeze, I do silks, I do duo trapeze, crazy stuff, right? And I have an instructor that I work with a lot of privates that I do. So my ex trolled Facebook. They previously never really had Facebook because they just used my account. They then got their own Facebook and eventually their own Instagram, and trolled the people that were outside of the abuser's area of influence, but were my friends. Found that my circus artist instructor had posted on Facebook, does anyone know any good divorce lawyers? Used another individual to try to get intelligence on, was that actually post for Red? Ironically, it ultimately backfired because I caught wind of it, talked to my instructor, and was like, so who's your divorce lawyer? Because I need one. Thanks. Really good divorce lawyer if anyone needs it. So yeah, there's a lot of craziness, and that's more very tactical things that you can do.
Also, the minute you decide to leave, if you ask Lady Domaina how many of her friends or considered friends from that time in a percentage, right, that are still there, because they were all in his influence, they were all his friends originally, they were all, and of course he uses that group of people to try and find out any information. You have to start counting that all those people are compromised.
Yep.
You know, and you use them if you want to get data back to the abuser. You can also find out if they are compromised by certain things, but don't try it. It's not
Yeah,
worth it.
don't openly do it. So there's the Tyrion Lannister approach. So in Game of Thrones, where Tyrion, I think it was one of the early season 4 or so, where he was marrying off Cersei's daughter. Spoiler alerts. He would say a different location or a different prince that he was going to propose Cersei's daughter to. And then ultimately, Cersei got wind of it and confronted Tyrion on, you're going to marry my daughter off to insert name here, right? That's what I did. Like, tons of people asked, so where are you at now? A different answer every time. And I knew which one was which, right? So when ultimately the abuser said, oh, I know she's in insert town here, is okay, I got it, right? That's my Tyrion Lannister maneuver. I had no other phrase for that other than I saw this on Game of Thrones, thanks. And yeah, so to answer your question, it was two individuals, and I'm going to be very judicious right now because, again, we're on live and streaming. But yes, the abuser did actually use both of them to try to get, facts or information or locations from me. And it put both of them in very difficult situations and very uncomfortable situations as well. It's heavy. It's so heavy. I can get my cat. He's right here.
But no, it's fine. And this also touches on one of the other core principles of social engineering as a whole. It's getting to be able to belong to that particular tribe. Once you have the trust of the group and you can slowly edge your way in there, and once you have that, you're pretty much in, because there's a good chance that you'll be able to spin that later, because people by nature, I still believe, regardless of all the shit that is going on now and has for generations, inherently want to help, and they want to believe the best in people. And God, if that's not exploitable, Jesus.
So I think I would agree in general about the helping. I think that's changed over a period of time, that people are becoming more cynical, especially in these times. But one of the interesting things is that she tried to integrate her friends, her outside friends, into the current tribe, right? And the interesting thing is, he didn't want any of it. So anytime they were involved with, and you've talked to Deep Fish and Ginger Jesus and all those stuff, I can understand why he didn't want them in there. I mean, honestly,
They're great people. Come on.
God, I have to live across from one of them as well.
Rubbish.
Anyway, but he didn't want that. But if he was any sort of smart, he would have played and used that to figure out what's going on, right? And have a better understanding, and then he would have been able to influence his control longer.
And I was so cognitively overloaded at the time.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't really process everything that was going on, to the point of it took me months of just letting things process and realizing, holy crap, I was groomed and like I have no self-confidence, to the point of it took me an hour to choose a shower curtain because I didn't know what my ex would want, even though I'm separated, right? Like that analysis paralysis and kind of getting into PTSD.
No, I mean that shower curtain was quick. I mean, and I say we, me, my wife, and Red walked around furniture stores where she had no clue what style she wanted or was, right? Because
the assimilation of identity was so complete that I couldn't separate at all.
So, no, go ahead, Silent.
And we spent a lot of time at work talking about work things and all this stuff, but when she was with herself, she had a level of identity crisis because her identity was so tied to the abuser.
Like, I moved into an empty apartment. That's
Thank
just like,
God we didn't have to move anything, but
Yeah.
now we've moved you how many times?
Sounds like a dream.
I've moved more times than I care to admit in the past 4+ years, mainly for safety. But yeah, I put a bag on the floor. My cat. We had an exfiltration of Puffin, right? So again, when you're in that crisis moment, it's like, first of all, rule one, right? It's like the zombie rule: have a go bag, and then secondly, you have to acknowledge that you're going to have PTSD, and for what worked for me was that my existence now is for my cat. Like, I need to make sure my cat is okay. If anything happens to me, my cat is not okay. I need to make sure that I have a job to buy my cat food. And it was like, it sounds so small, right? But it's actually called chunking. And you have, and I still
Not
have.
chumming. Chumming's different.
Chunk. There's an N and a K. And in times of crises or in high stressful times, like if you lose your job or whatever happens, I still find myself going back to that. Like I have a Post-it in my kitchen that goes, Puffin, tea, repeat. So feed the cat, make sure the cat's okay. Feed yourself because you might be stressed and you may not get that hunger trigger and you need to eat. Speaking of Puffin, hello buddy. And then repeat it. So a lot of chunking helps as far as getting small steps out of the way so that you're not in that paralysis state.
And right at the beginning, literally, we had to make her eat.
Like, and this is no joke. Christy, you should eat.
Mm-hmm.
Or Fred, you should eat. I'm acknowledging that I don't feel hungry, but it has been 12 hours since I have eaten, so I should probably eat.
Yeah. And there are people that say, set an alarm on your watch, on your phone, drink, eat, drink, eat.
What's actually funny is that every time I have a conversation with Red over Discord, I see all of these in the course of a conversation. Cat, eat, drink, cat, eat, drink.
It's true. It's really. It's like
It,
my post.
it could be a 10-minute conversation and she'll cycle through it 3 times. And then I end up buying the same food she ate.
It's true. Like, how's that French onion
So-
dip, by the way?
Oh, it's gone. The whole fucking thing is
honestly,
gone.
if she's done her job right, you'll have English tea because I've done my job right. You better have shortbread,
I
right?
will say, I am now a pervasive English tea snob. I hate you,
Interesting.
Silence. Yes. To the point where I have to get it imported because Lipton sucks.
Oh, by the way, just so let you know, you remember I had literally how many hundreds of tea bags given to me at Black Hat last year?
Really?
You
People
had
just
a
brought you
dedicated
tea?
suitcase
I had a
Right.
dedicated suitcase. I'll have
that
to
they
find the
brought
pictures
over
and send it.
from from
Yeah,
Europe.
so one of my team brought them over from Europe. I think there's 300. I think I had a total of 1,200 tea bags that I had to bring back, and I had to carry on. Right, they are running out now.
You will have to give me a rundown of what I should be drinking because I've had this conversation a million times and I would like to have a proper tea.
High tea. We
Sure.
can do this.
Oh, we definitely need to do high tea.
Yeah.
We need to do high tea.
All right,
It's a thing.
I'm
It's a
game.
thing.
So Red, today,
Yep.
how are you?
I am better than what I was in 2016.
I'm better than
Um,
2017. I'm
and
better
2000
than
So yeah, this is kind of so. Short answer: do you still have night terrors? Yes. Do you still have PTSD? Yes. Do you still have struggles day to day? Yes. But the amplitude of it and the waves of the anxiety has gone down. I do not get a lot of the physical manifestations of fibromyalgia that I used to get when I was in the thick of it. I was on the couch, heavily medicated because of the sheer amount of pain. I am nowhere near that level anymore. I also acknowledge that, particularly with PTSD and emotional abuse and just the healing aspect of it, is going to be long. It is ever so frustrating. And if you're the type of person that you think that talking to a mental health professional will help, definitely do that if it's right for you. Again, they're kind of like dating. You need to find someone who's a good fit for you, who also understands like emotional abuse versus physical abuse and so forth.
Puffin, the bathroom.
Bye, Puffin.
Make sure you don't pee on it.
Oh God, he's going to go pee. Puffin, I have to clean that later. But it's a growing, like I don't have the constant fear going out in public as I once did. And it's a slow, gradual, the amplitude goes down. The more years away from that really bad situation that I go.
Do you, and again, you don't have to answer,
Oh, I know.
do you still have to deal with him?
So I have a lot of compensating controls on whatever remnants of my previous social electronic connections. So like a lot of the old emails and so forth, I have a lot of compensating controls and very good friends who act as safeguards for me. So if something was to come up in one of those mediums, they would tell me, but it's also they would take out all of the manipulation and just give me the sanitized version of it. This came in very useful when I was going through my divorce, because even if I saw the name, it would send me into an anxiety attack. Now, again, dear employers out there at HR, please change the names of your employees post-divorce so that they don't have to see the last name of their abuser for years. I'm just saying, I'm getting off that soapbox now.
Well, good. Now you had shared with me privately quite a bit of good information to help people. I'll ask you later if I can somehow share that with other people. The whole ghosting, how to get yourself.
Ghosting guide, yep.
Yeah, your it really is. It's exquisite.
Yeah, and another area on that, if we're talking like encrypted messaging, so there was a time where I didn't know if my new device was compromised or not, right? Threema is like legit. If you need to get a hold of me in a secure end-to-end encryption, Threema, Threema.ch. Like it is, if you lose your Threema ID, you're done, right? Signal's another good one. Threema now has video messaging as well, very similar to like iPhones
And the great
Android,
thing about Threema is you don't have to have a phone number, an email, or anything attached to
or
it.
connections attached
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
You have a unique identifier, and you have levels of
Trust.
like trust. So as in every single contact in Threema, it has 1 to 3 stars. So the 3-star is that we have been physically in the same room and exchanged QR codes. So
Yeah.
I know that I have seen you, right?
And if you allow your Threema to talk to your phone number and a friend has it, the same phone number and Threema and attached it, and you see it, you will then be orange.
2-star. Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
see 2-star.
Yeah. And then if you've never met the guy before, it's going to say, hey, he's a red
Right.
guy and I don't trust that person to save his life.
Yeah.
But you can still message him.
Other things, turn off iMessaging, right?
Yep.
Like just do SMS because geolocation's a thing.
Not even that. Also, that they know that you've read the message or you're typing at the same time.
Yeah, Proton Mail.
Because they know you're on.
Yeah, Proton Mail is another huge one. Again, a lot of these Swiss and German companies know how to do their privacy. I'm just saying. And then now that Threema does video conferencing, it used to be VC, which is more of a secure video conference that was more HIPAA compliant. But now Threema has just blown them out of the park. They've added a lot of features to that platform. I prefer personally Threema over Signal.
Sure.
Me too.
Well, I'm gonna have to start using that then.
I will send you my code right after this, Randall.
Hell yes.
You'll be red until we meet.
Fair enough. I could be a robot. You don't know. That's fucking. You don't know who I am.
I mean,
fair enough.
You can't be. You're late online. I'm sorry. Robots will be on time.
I mean, we've all seen the meme about AI of like back in the 80s, like AI is going to take over everything, and then there's a picture of a cat and it says dog on it. So there's that. So all right. Well, this was awesome. It was. I mean, the story fucking sucks, but like the information that came out of it.
Don't need the pity. So here's the one thing: if you know someone who's going through this situation, right? There's only 4 words. I'll give you the choice of the 2 sets of 4 words, right? What can I do? What do you need? That is
How
it.
can I help?
How can I help? You have 3 sets, right? And then you have to sit and listen because they're going to have to process for a while, and it could be something as stupid as I just kind of need to go somewhere and not be alone, or I need a cup of tea, or I don't know what to do next, right? The whole, oh, it's not so bad, the minimizing, stop, don't even go there. Or I understand I've been through something. No, again, so subjective. What can I do? How can I help? Right? And then just listen. It could be I don't know where to stay, give the couch, right? That was more beneficial as a survivor going through anything. I mostly with work, believe it or not, like you're going to have the person, they're going to trigger, right? They might have to get up and leave. The minimizing or the, I forget the wording of it. Shoot, that's a new one I have to figure out. But the oh, it's not so bad, or the positive toxicity type of a thing.
Yeah, okay.
Just stop. Don't do that. So it's pretty much those 4 words. How can I help? And you have to give the person, the survivor, a safe environment for however long that they need to process.
And don't try and put your opinion, your recommendations, because honestly, it's their life they need to pull together, and you can just listen, and you can give advice like, if I was in this situation, I would do this, but never say I would recommend you do that. I mean, we listened to her for ages, and I don't give recommendations anyway, unless it's a security vendor, and I recommend they leave me alone.
Very fucking true. And it's also because it's subjective, because the survivor is so tuned at that point to manipulation, social engineering. Like, if you catch wind of it, then you're out of that circle of trust, right? So it's very much, I can give you the recommendation of what I would do, but how can I help you? I will support you irregardless, right?
And the other thing is, do not recommend to be the mediator.
Yeah, I've fallen into that already. Yes, that best intentions, I had them, everybody has them, but it is not, in the end, it will end up doing more harm than good. And then yes. But yeah, one of the things that you brought up just now, that again, I'll take it back to the whole training and stuff and things that really turned. I tell everybody, even not doing it for a living, learning what I have about these tactics of persuasion and things like that have literally changed how I interact with my entire world. I'm a different person than I was before I studied this. Active listening is a principle that has turned my world upside down. Go ahead, Simon.
And it's interesting because the exact word active listening is completely opposite to what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. It's growing up or just even as an adult, one of the compliments that I get steadily is like, oh, you're such a good listener and blah, 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 blah. But before I really understood what active listening is, I was a shitty listener. Because and it's nobody's fault. It's human nature. You have a conversation, and of course, you are waiting for your turn to contribute to the conversation. Like, yes, you're listening and like you're catching little cues, but maybe you're fidgeting with this or fidgeting with that. Like, what's the only downside about doing my streams is I have to run a bunch of stuff, so I am actively listening as much as I possibly can without being distracted. But when you really sit and listen for a conversation, and this is also a really great party trick for people who suck at conversations that are afraid to go to a DEF CON party, to a Black Hat party, because you don't know anybody. Like, what are you going to do? People love talking about themselves. And if you actively listen for every little thing that they're saying, you can pick and choose things like, I'm going to come back to this later, but now let me refocus. And that just makes you a better conversationalist. It puts you more at ease. It gives you a sense of power over your own fears of this, and you will learn and absorb so much more. But yes, it is exponentially more exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It is so processor intensive. You almost overheat doing it and you can't like fucking do it. It's hard to do it in a group of people. One-on-one is hard enough, but if you take some of the, and I just put a general link again, Joe Navarro, Robin Dreek is another one. There's a whole list of people that cover this kind of stuff. Actively, just listening. There's a great scene from Parks and Rec, where these two people are dating. It's Rob Lowe and I forget what her name is, but he always tries to fix everything. And one day he just somebody tells him like, just sit down and listen. And the only thing you're allowed to say is, that really sucks. And that's all that she wanted. And like just processing that and not trying to fix it and not injecting yourself into it. So very, very powerful.
I'm going to dovetail a little bit.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's fine. So, and then this is just me, right? So yes, that really sucks, but you have to be, with at least me, careful. I don't want your pity, right? When you hear, oh, I'm a domestic violence survivor, you get the immediate, I'm like, fuck it, stop, stop, right? You gotta own that shit. You have to use the word survivor because it puts people on alert. I don't want your pity, right? I am in a better situation now today than I ever was going through that, right? So the fact that I'm on the other side, like, okay, next, Ariana Grande at this point, right? It's a badge at this point, but going through it, I had to acknowledge that I was a survivor, right? And I had to, unfortunately, use that phrase in the correct situations to get what I needed and resources that I needed, right? So, domestic leave policy, I have to because I'm a survivor. I don't need your pity. It's how can I help?
Right.
What do you need?
But you also have to be very cognizant you don't use it as a crutch.
No.
Don't use it for your own social engineering.
Don't be a
You know.
wound collector,
Yeah.
Right.
as Joe Navarro says, right? It is I need to, very tactic, right? So I need to recoup my vacation time.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of
my
this.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are people that will use it to get pity, to use that, where they've come out of the situation where they've been abused and turning into a form of abuse and control.
Right.
Right. So you have to be cognizant of how you're using it for, I hate to say the word for good, but for the good of you, not for the good of trying to make everybody else do things for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's I don't know if I can draw. It feels like I can draw a parallel to things like imposter syndrome and not being able to take a compliment and oh no, stop it, blah blah blah. Once I learned to just take the fucking compliment and move on, it made my life easier, the other person's life easier. I don't make them feel awkward for complimenting me. Like it feels like it's on the same parallel bus.
In Joe Navarro's book, it really is the wound collector. Is follow him on Twitter, pull up the definition of it.
Joe's awesome. Yeah, Joe is really good.
Awesome.
During the last presidential election, I was actually tweeting with him on Twitter because he was giving rundowns of body language and things during the thing, during the debates, and it was super fascinating just being able to talk with him like that and seeing what, hey, did you see how he did this thing and how he came up from behind her and that's a power move and blah blah blah.
Actually, that was a little bit different because if I looked at that and looked at people with dementia,
yeah,
right, it was very much a clear movement of how people who are in situations of uncontrol and worry go into this different way. And the reason I say that is because my mother-in-law had dementia, and we were watching this and we were like, look at that facial expression. Who does it remind you of? And we were like, my mom-in-law.
Yeah.
Right. And God bless her soul, right? She went through hell towards the end of it, right, because of it. But she was doing a lot of the things, and she needed her people around her, right? So she would, in some ways, to be honest, we were in an abusive situation with her. She was abusing us through her sickness. But when I looked at that, she needed us around her, like him having his wife, his daughter, what do you call it in there?
But we're talking politics. This is not the street.
No, it's not politics. We're not talking about politics. We're actually talking about how a situation of no fault of that person is now an abusive situation to everybody else.
Decline the coping mechanisms or behaviors that can be perceived and have abuse towards others. Yeah.
It's a crazy world we live in. But the thing is the minute you can recognize that because you're out of that situation. Now, caveat, if you have actually bought a house, don't leave.
You are correct. Okay, I need to give so again, if you own property and that property is only in your name and not your spouse's name, depending on the state that they're in, don't abandon them. You're not going to get that in the divorce. And don't remove the abuser from your beneficiaries until after the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole other chapter.
That's interesting. We should talk about hit that another time. Well, this was good. Where's the cat? Do we need a cat cleanser? Do we have
Gizmo literally said, "Bugger off! I'm going to bed."
Yeah.
I got a sauntering toothless boy. Come here.
No, he wants to come and say goodbye to his mate.
Yeah.
Where's my mate?
Come here, buddy.
You dude.
Oh,
hey, buddy. That's my mate. Hey.
How old is he?
19.
Guess. Well, you're not supposed to give it.
You don't say how old he is. You say guess how old he is. You don't start with how old is he.
He is 19 and completely toothless.
Oh, baby.
And I have to give him subcutaneous fluids twice a week with help from Silent & Co.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
He's adorable.
But he's worth it.
Guess he wants his 20.
Well, jeez, you know what? Sometime get him to get right up on that mic and do that again because I want to put that on my soundboard.
Son of a
I can make it. Don't worry.
That's perfect. I'm totally taking that. I'm gonna pull that out later. When did that happen? At 49:43 on my local thing. Okay, very good. I'm going for that.
It can happen on demand anytime you need
Oh
it.
no! I can get other sounds out of him.
Oh yeah. So like you are his best friend. I am
That's
chopped
my
up
mate.
liver.
That's my mate.
So for anybody who would like to, and I highly recommend it, to follow these two wonderful people, at Lady Demona on Twitter, at Silent Shot on Twitter.
I'm on Twitch, but we don't really stream very often. I think that's when I probably change, and it's just good-hearted InfoSec people kind of giving the shit to each
Yeah.
other.
But easily, if there are any silver linings of having to be home more and like having opportunities to do more projects and get with more people to learn things, I often say this of people who I really admire. I don't want to imagine a timeline of my life where I did not meet either of these two. If I had died and they show me a playback of like, oh, you could have met these two awesome people, I would have been extremely fucking pissed. But that didn't happen. I did get a chance to meet these two, and they are amazing.
And if you find yourself in a situation and you don't have your support network, right? So if you notice, I never said any sort of like national hotline, blah blah blah. The only recommendation I would make is a crisis text line, which is 714-714 in the United States. And they handle anything. It is I am alone, I'm just depressed, I'm having dark feelings. And it's counselors who just will text with you until such time as the moment has passed, or they can get you resources.
And I don't know that they have it running this year, but coming back to our hacker community, if we were at DEF CON this year, if it was, they have a very, very good, very talented, very professional crisis hotline.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Their hotline is
sounds
amazing.
a bit like an oxymoron saying that we actually have something very professional.
It's true.
It's as professional as we can be.
Run by Miss Ada Zebra and the Sock Goons, and it's awesome. But we're not there, but at least we can be virtually together. So thank both of you so very much for coming on. I can't wait to have you back on already. And for everybody else, thank you for everybody for hanging out. I really appreciate it. This was a very important episode for me, and I'm very happy that we did it. To see all of my old interviews, my past ones, just go up to YouTube/Second Order Chaos. I always appreciate the follows. I had a few during this. Very, very appreciative. Subscribers, just as appreciative. So thank you for taking an interest. And if you found something useful from what we talked about today, that's all I ever want. If it was useful to you, pass it on to somebody else. I don't give a shit if they never follow, but if it's useful, pass the information on. That's why I do this. So
or just have a listening ear. It's all worth it.
Yeah, all completely worth it. So thank you, everybody, and we be out. You two hang around for a minute.
Bathroom.
Got to learn to hold water. Silent said that. Puffin was ready going. Really? Again? Woman, I trust you to be on screen and not screwed up.